Hello everybody. Evan Abrams here, back with more video challenges for you. I'm continuing on with our work this week of cutting out people, putting stuff behind them, and then tomorrow we're going to harmonize it all with some CRT looks, taking back to the classic age of, middle age of television. I'm Evan Abrams. Like I said, thanks for being with me. We're going to be working a lot in After Effects today, so if you want to follow along, you want to make sure that you've got the After Effects beta installed. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. So, thanks everyone who's hanging out. Umacorn, Rick, how you doing? Joshua, Robert, what's going on? Oh, and Marsha, hello. And yeah, CJ, holding it down, keeping everybody honest in the chat. This is good. So, if you have any questions about anything you see, let me know in the chat. Try to help you out. If you're over on YouTube, I got that chat in front of me too, so you can ask me questions there, and we'll try to make the stuff go. Let's quickly jump into After Effects and we'll see what we've done so far and where we're going. So, here on the screen, this is kind of the final form of the thing that we're getting into. We want to drive towards this, having a kick push down the street, swerving in and out of various 3D accoutrements. We've got our, we'll say, off-brand Italian-American plumber blocks, and we've got some pretty generic golden rings. No one can hold that as IP, I suppose. So we've got both major families of video game ephemera represented here. But this is the idea. And in particular, we're going to be making use of something that is new in the After Effects beta. You see we're in the After Effects beta right here. If you would like to download the After Effects beta yourself, if you want to kind of get in on all the good stuff, you want to make sure that you get your cloud app open, come over to apps, come on down to beta apps, and enjoy these wonderful beta features. So the feature we're talking about today is that's right, Umacorn, they're Maria blocks. Maybe they're Marsha blocks, we don't know. So the main feature we're going to be making use of is 3D object import, true 3D objects. So if we make a new composition here, and I bring into this situation, after some thinking, we're going to be able to actually import three-dimensional objects right into our composition. So I'm going to bring in one of those Italian plumber blocks .glb. This is a GLB file. I'm going to drop this in. 3D models in your composition require the use of advanced 3D renderer to be visible. The renderer has been changed so you can work with this scene. But this is a real 3D object. It has depth, it has sides, it has a kind of volume. And in fact, we know this to be true because if I go ahead and add a second block into the mix, the two blocks intersect each other, right? You can see their geometries are meshing and mashing into one another. They're not independent things on different layers. They're existing in the same 3D world with each other. And if we just kind of have a little orbit around, you can see, oh yeah, it's got all the sides, baby. It's got everything we would ever want from a 3D model. And you can bring in all kinds of 3D models. So .objs are in play, GLTFs, we can get those. And those are kind of the big three that we're talking about, our graphics interchange files that we can push in between. I would say the more efficient of them is the GLB. So that's the one that I like to stick with. This is something that I made in Cinema 4D and I exported out here. But there are many ways to make these yourself if you want to make some things to play with, or download the project file and you'll have access to those things. This whole file that you're looking at here, that's all for you to play with. With all of the gulbs and the gulfs and all the things. But like I say, if you want to make some for yourself, we have a fun little life hack that's going to work for you here. So I'm going to open up Adobe Illustrator here, and we can generate, as you know, any sort of thing we would like in here. So this is just a circle, and it's got a stroke on it, 100-point stroke on it. And then I've gone to Effect, 3D and Materials, Extrude and Bevel, but you could revolve, inflate, rotate, etc. And as long as you're doing the new stuff, the hot new stuff, come over to Materials. I've given it some roughness. I've made it very metallic, which is going to make it reflective. And then, all you got to do with that object is just come on down to the bottom and say export 3D object. And then you can send out that GLTF or the USDA, which in this case is not the US Drug Administration. That's a different thing. But this is how you can send out a 3D object from Illustrator. Open that up in After Effects. What do you think about that? So that's a fun bit of business that you can do. And in fact, I did exactly that. And that's how we ended up with this ring. So if we drop this ring down here, and I'll just move that out, you can see, oh yeah, that is really a ring. It really, really is what it is. Hold on, I'm just going to make sure that my do not disturb is on here. So it's got all the geometry. It's got the extrusions, the bevels. It's got the edges, the caps. It's got all the stuff that you do. So it's right here. So enjoy that. That's a way we can make some things. But like I say, download the files, play around with them. How are we going to use these? How do we stick these into our scenes in the way that we want? Well, here's where we kind of started our journey yesterday. So what I'm going to do is November 27th, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that. And we've got extracted. So the other day together, here's basically where we finished off, right? We had the person cut out. We had their board cut out. We did a big day of roto brush here to get this chopped out for us. And the thing that we wanted to do is make sure that we freeze this. So we hit freeze so that all of our hard work is recorded here. But one more thing we want, I'm going to duplicate one of those. And then I'm just going to remove the roto brush from it. And that's going to give us our clean plate. Clean plate, right? This is a nice clean image. This is just the original, all the stuff, right? So what we're going to be doing with this is we need to extract some data from this. So we are going to find the 3D camera tracker effect and apply that. Or you might come up to window tracker. And if you pull open the tracker, you can say track camera. That's going to apply the same effect. And what it's going to do is start analyzing this thing. We've got 126 frames for it to analyze. It's already done. And what it's done is placed these little, actually, let's make those track points bigger so you can see them. It's placed these little track points all over on areas of contrast that we can enjoy. And Joshua, you are spot on. The USD format is becoming very popular, very, very standardized. I'm always cautious to call something a standard because as soon as you do, two more standards pop up. Speaking of popping up, we've got a seamless transition to talk about these little tracking markers that are popping up all over the place. They are appearing on points of contrast that are consistent throughout the image. So you see this point shows up on the man's jacket, right, as they're drifting through, and it goes away because it stops being particularly consistent. If you twirl into the advanced, you're going to see the average error, which is, how erroneous this might be. We generally want a number under 1, an under 1 pixel error, at least on an HD footage, is probably going to be nice and safe. We're not going to have too much drift. But if you notice things like, I don't think this point is particularly correct, I can delete it. I can select this little point and delete that. I can select this point on its genes, maybe delete that. And you can see I've already reduced my error by a 0.01. That feels pretty good to me. But in general, as I scrub through, all of the little flowers appear to be in the right places out in the world. So I can reasonably assume that this has been a pretty stable track. Now, other things you might have to do, this has used the typical solve method. I could say, hey, I demand you use the typical solve method. And that's for handheld motion. If you have something that is mostly flat or a tripod pan, meaning the camera is locked down on a tripod pan, then you might need to specify what those particular things are. But generally, we know what's going on. We're auto-detecting that this is a typical scene, and that's working out. So let's see, what else is useful to know about this technology and what it's doing? The other thing, if you really find this number is too high, you can just go ahead and do a detailed analysis. It's going to add way more points out into the world, and that's going to help you out. But the main thing is You want to clean it up. So like I say, this person is moving around. They are not a suitable candidate to get points on them. So you probably want to select any points that appear on that subject, that moving person, and get rid of them. And anything in reflections might be causing problems. If there was a car that drove by, let's get the points off of those. If there's trees waving in the wind, get the points off of those. Those are not reliable sources of data. We want reliable sources of data and truth when we do this stuff. Really important. Even when you're faking stuff, you have to start with the truth. So what do we have to do next? Well, we need to create a camera out in the world. And while I'm doing that, I might as well define something about this universe. I'm going to select all of the points over here that are hanging out. Let's see, maybe a bunch of them. Let's get a bunch of them that are kind of on the sidewalk. Or maybe something like this. I'm trying to find points that more or less conform to what I would consider the ground to be. And this seems ground enough. And you can see that this big circle feels correct in terms of being on the ground. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say set ground plane and origin. That means that 0, 0, the middle center of our world, is over there where that target was at, right? So now that that is a place in the world, let's see, maybe I want to put a big old cube over there. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to say create a null and a camera, and that has produced a null layer, a layer that has it has data, but it doesn't have any visual information to it. And it's created a camera through which we're observing that thing. So for example, if I just call up some text and I say stuff, you remember how I like to just write the word stuff. And if I put the word stuff, a two-dimensional layer, between the board, the guy, and the clean plate, right, we are going to get to observe stuff between these people. Hold on, let's get our solos off here. And now you see stuff is neatly contained behind this person. Pretty good. I'm going to bring our resolution down because I'm really going to want to kind of preview and scrub through this a few times. But if I want stuff to live in the world, I simply must make that a three-dimensional layer. Oh, where has it gone? Where is the stuff, right? I thought we were going to be looking at the stuff. Well, what's happened is that the stuff is at 7244960, which in this case is way over here. You can kind of see it poking out of the corner here. I want it to live where that null is. So I'm going to call up the position of that null. I'm going to copy that position, and I'm going to just paste it over here onto the position of the stuff. Now I'm just going to really quickly ram preview so that we can enjoy how this goes. And I'm going to save us some time by making sure that we're really only caring about the parts in which we're going to see a little interaction between these two. And we'll just ram preview that, see how well we did. But stuff looks pretty consistently in the right place. It's behaving as if it is stuck to the ground, so that's good. I gotta give big ups to that. So it looks correct because as we're moving through, it's not floating like it's below the ground. So if this were too low, let me just adjust it down like that. It doesn't feel correct the way it's interacting with these other pixels here. This feels correct, and it helps because we put a null that we know was tracked to the surface, and therefore we can say, yes, this will be good. This will be consistent for us to use. So, I don't know, we got a thing out in the world. We can start to manipulate it if we want. So we could try to rotate it to be in line with the street. We might kind of bring it down to be a bit more like that. And, you know, we scrub through and that seems pretty good. We'd say that seems to be sort of on the road, as it were, with us. Something like this, maybe. So that's feeling pretty correct. Don't anticipate you're always going to get it done correctly right away. And notice I'm having a real hard time getting this sort of the way I want it because I'm adjusting too close to the axis. So you see this wonderful widget here, this gizmo. If you hover over and you just grab, say, the Z here, then you can start to tilt that away. If you move the mouse further away while keeping that mouse held, it's way easier to do smaller micro adjustments to its actual orientation. Also, you might find that orienting things relative to that object is not particularly helpful to you. So why don't you come up here and say, we're going to switch into world axis mode, meaning this gizmo is now aligned to the world that we're living in, not the object. Or let's switch into view mode. So it is now view axis. So all of the axes are aligned to where we're looking. These can be really helpful for getting you oriented in the space and getting the stuff exactly where you want it. But this is not the stuff we're interested in. If we want to say have the stuff have some depth, you can see this is very flat stuff. Just tap the A key a couple of times. Make sure that you are in advanced or Cinema 4D mode. And kick us into advanced mode here. And I'm going to come down, and when you tap A now, a couple of taps on the A will bring you the ability to give this an extrusion depth. What do you think about this? What do you think about this extrusion depth, right? And now we've got some 3D stuff out in the world, and that's working out pretty nicely. I gotta say, I'm pretty happy about the 3D stuff in the world. So big thumbs up for us with the 3D stuff. Anytime the stuff is going to appear to intersect with the ground, generally, this is where the game gets a little bit trickier, right? Because we don't have any shadows down there. We see that there should be some amount of shadow density. You see there's some light casting this way, right? So the sun, although they're pretty evenly lit, so that's going to give the game away. But we need to bring in some true 3D stuff. I've prattled on long enough about basic 3D things. Let's do some true 3D things. The process is just the same as if you were doing anything else. We've got our gulb. Let's just drag our gulb out here into the world. Boop. Where is the gulb? Well, don't worry. We just need to pick a null out in space and make sure that it's relative to that. So we are going to pick somewhere for a gulb to live. So maybe over here near the sewer grate, right? So I'll just right click on that. I'll say, let's create a null over there. And I'm going to find the position of that. I'm going to find the position of Italian plumber block. And you could copy and paste, or what I would recommend you do is to parent using the pick whip, holding down shift, point it to that. Notice that the position here goes 0, 0, 0. And that means that this is now exactly on top of that. And so now I would probably just raise this up a little bit. So I'll grab our plumber block here, make sure we're in object mode. We'll just raise it up a little bit, and maybe I will shrink it down because this plumber block is far too large. But now it is kind of floating above where that sewer is. And you can see, whoop, there we go. It is working out. The plumber block is behind the person. We got it. And if we wanted to say, induce some, I don't know, just some random oscillating movement in here. Maybe we're not being particularly precious about it. I could tap R or twirl down into the transform attributes. And I'm just going to hold down Option, click on the orientation. I'm going to type in wiggle. I'm adding an expression here instead of using keyframes. I want this to wiggle, say 0.5 times a second, 90 degrees. And if we just kind of scrub through, you can see that the block is having a tumble, right? The block is just tumbling away over there, which adds a little bit of nice kind of rotational, something interesting happening, right? So we've got this thing hanging out in the world. I think that's doing a pretty darn good job. I'm gonna give us a big thumbs up on that. If we wanted to add more, it's just as easy as picking places and trying to put them there. Again, I'm going to recommend that you try to put some reference objects out in the world to help you. So for example, here's 3 of them back there. I'm going to right click and say, let's create a null that lives back there. I will duplicate Italian American block, and I will parent it now to that new track null that was way back there. So obviously that's changing all of its settings. So I might need to scale this back down. And it's tumbling around, so it's hard for me to get a grip on it to move it just vertically. Switch into world axis mode, move it up, and problem solved, right? So it's free to tumble and bumble however it wants, but I'm able to switch into world axis mode and move it around however I so desire. Now, All of these things I'm placing are behind, right? They're going to show up behind, and that creates that illusion because these two layers, which let's go ahead and make them purple, right? These two layers of the board and the guy are in front of the blocks, therefore they are going to appear to be in front of the blocks. Now, if I wanted something, say, in front of the skateboarder here, then let's bring some rings out into the mix. And the rings, where shall the rings live? Well, I'm going to come into the clean plate here, and we're going to make sure that we can grab some points. Selecting the 3D camera tracker is going to help us find our bearings in the world. Let's say we start around here. So I'm going to go ahead, create a null there. So we've got another track null out in the world. Then we are going to take our ring, parent that to the track null, and we need to make sure that this is going to be in front of the guy. We're going to move it up off the ground. We're going to scale it down quite a lot. And we're going to try, or I'm going to try rather. I mean, I hope you're trying along at home as well. But I'm going to try to just kind of move this thing over and to try to make sure that it feels like it's kind of more in the middle of the road, right? So this is feeling a little bit more like it's in the middle of the road. Now, let's say you needed to make it seem like this guy was like swerving to avoid. Well, a lot of the times what we need to do is just kind of massage where this is. And give it a little bump this way and a little bump that way. We're trying to find where he is dodging. What is he dodging around? And a big part of what kind of creates the illusion, I know we're running out of time, so I better cooking show bring us into this version here where we can observe a lot of these rings. It's really about trying to find the real world locations that are represented here and to make it close enough. It's an illusion that this man would have knocked into this ring, and it might even be kind of in the wrong place. But by having enough tracking points that we can kind of reasonably sort of suss out where the planes are. So for example, we've got these three rings here, or sorry, these 3 points here that give us a pretty reliable location on the road where the wheels are going to go. That's going to help us to get something in that space. Now, that's another reason you would probably want to turn on detailed analysis. It's going to put more points out in the world. You could also right-click on this and say, create a solid. And you see it's created a nice big solid out on the road. And as long as I sort of get this kind of correctly aligned, anything that is now relative to this solid is going to really help us figure out, plus minus away from that plane, where things are. So it's all about setting yourself up with some reference material out there, even if we're never really going to use them, right? We might delete them later. We might even right-click on them and we might make them into guide layers. So guide layers are not rendered. So there's no worry that if oopsie doodle, I didn't turn that guide layer off, maybe we're still going to see it on the render. You won't, because I turned it into a guide layer. So it's really just here to give us visual guidance. And in particular, I call up the position of this thing, and we call up the position of one of these rings. It's really helping us out to say the position of this is here. Position of, no wait, that's not it. The position of the ring. Give me the position of one of these rings that's hanging out. This one, P. So you can see the position of the ring pretty close to the position, that Z vertical position of, it's kind of the depth, or it's the Y position we need to be interested in, our up, down, X, oh boy, oh boy, my brains, everybody, X, Y, Z. So making sure that we've got that in the right kind of plane, well, it's all down to, is it above or below this green solid? And that'll help you kind of get these things into the locations that we hope that they will feel correct. Now, speaking of things that are going to feel correct, tomorrow we're going to be taking this in another direction. So even though we've got all these wondrous things happening, obviously we haven't harmonized a lot of the lighting. There's a lot of, we'll say, more advanced things that we could be doing. We're going to cover a lot of those on Friday. So we're going to talk about lighting and shadows and that type of thing. Stick around till Friday. We'll do that then. tomorrow we're going to complete the look of this by deploying some techniques to give us a kind of CRT TV vibe to all of this. Now, if you've seen this kind of out on social media, we've got things like chromatic aberrations happening over here. We've sort of down-resed the footage a little bit. We've got some scan lines happening, and we do a little bit of glitching out with the stuff. If we come into make sure that we are checking out how this stuff is sort of warping and changing a little bit as we apply a little bit of an adjustment here to kind of knock it around a little bit. So hopefully you're going to enjoy that as we get into these CRT kind of glitches and looks coming up tomorrow. So stick around for that. We don't need to apply it to any kind of 3D or fancy footage. You can be applying it to anything. So hopefully that's going to be pretty universal for folks. I'm Evan Abrams. Like I said, we got a rich full day of activities still coming to you here on Adobe Live. So stick around. A lot of things to illustrate. I think birthday cards is coming up next. Today's actually my birthday. So be nice to get a card. Anyway, thank you for being with me. Like I say, I'm Evan Abrams. Find me at EC Abrams around the internet. I'll see you tomorrow. Till then, stay creative, be kind to each other, and I'll see you all around the internet. Okay, bye for now. Where's the thing I want? There it is.